All right, we have a very special guest with us today. He is a professional surfer, a journalist, a marine conservation scientist, an ocean steward. He holds a PhD in chemistry. And as co-founder of the Mega Lab, he has pioneered large-scale, community-driven 3D mapping of coral reefs in places like Hawaii, Fiji, Tahiti, pushing the boundaries of how we understand and preserve our oceans. He's an ambassador and board member for the Surfrider Foundation. And as a subject matter expert, he's even been called in front of U.S. Congress. He holds a Guinness World Record as one of the first to ascend Hawaii's Mauna Kea from base to peak, and is a longtime name on the lists of favorite surfers from your favorite surfers. He's been on a bit of a heater lately, touring as a featured surfer in Thomas Campbell's new film, Yiwo, and as the subject of Vice's excellent new documentary, The Smartest Surfer in the World, which you should all check out right now. None other than Dr. Cliff Kapono. Doctor, thank you so much for coming back on the lineup today.
Yeah, Dave, thank you for having me. Stoked to be here.
My pleasure, man. Where are we talking to you from today?
I'm at home in Hilo on the Big Island. Yeah, the eastern shores of home. So stoked. Right before I'm about to head off to the east coast of the continental U.S. to do a little run out there to talk to the Atlantic crew about surfing and hopefully some science too.
Good for you, man. It's been a couple of years since you and I have caught up, but in 2025 now, how much time do you get to spend at home? You've got so many different kind of verticals of your profession and so many interests, and you're in such demand. I'd imagine that it can be kind of straining in terms of the time away from home you have to spend.
Yeah, it can be. I've learned the power of no in the more recent years, I guess. And some of the people who helped me with that really is people like Salema Masakela, Jeremy Jones. He's a snowboarder based out of the center part of the continent. But I was getting pretty overwhelmed a bit trying to balance everything and still get work done. Yeah, I didn't want to just be like an evangelist of the work and not actually a practitioner. So I reached out to just some of those folks that I looked up to, and had a really good conversation with Salema, and he told me that if it's not screaming yes, then it's a no. And that's kind of helped me to begin to decide whether it's worth leaving the work maybe to talk about it. And I prioritize my year into quarter systems. So I have 2 quarters of the year that I prioritize swell. And then I have 2 quarters of the year that I prioritize sort of scientific investigation. So that helps me to figure out what season I'm in. I have an on season and an off season, but it's cut across sort of like the winters. So from November to February, it's pretty much central around Hawaii for the surf season. And then from June to about August, the southern hemisphere. And then in the spring and fall, that's when I try to put my head down and get some scientific studies going.
Right. It's interesting to hear you talk about that because, in modern age, evangelism is not an unimportant part of the job. Like Ezra Klein talks about the attention economy. So it's like there is a value in getting the message out and being ever present. But I don't know. You kind of see it so often with social media, and it is hard to say no to that. But it starts to get really thin, especially probably in cases like yours, where so much of what you do is so substance based, where saying no is allowing you to do deeper work. And I think that it does feel like the way that people are responding to social media, it's like that's maybe the better approach, is like a little bit more scarcity. But when you do come up for projects or come out and evangelize, you've got so much more depth behind you, as opposed to if you just all access all the time, every day, every week. I don't know if it's better, but it's definitely kind of works for me. And now I have a team. Like, it's not just sort of me doing a lot of the work. It's a huge team on both sides of the science. I have students that support the initiatives, other professors. We have research initiatives and collaborators that all kind of, once the
the story is designed and the study is designed, it's a group effort that gets it across. And like similarly to surfing, where it's not just like the surfer who's going out and doing something. You have someone who built the surfboard, and just in that you have, you know, the laminators, you have the sanders, you have the foam blowers,
right.
you have, and then the designer, and that's just to get the tool. And then you have the people who are supporting your score. It's the forecasters. It's also the local community that are kind of inviting you to the wave or restricting you to certain opportunities. And then you have a big part is the documentation of the filmers and
right. people
like yourselves who create the distribution, you know, to make sure people see what's out there to build upon it. So it's like, it's become sort of this realization that professional life is not an individual situation, and trying to give energy to all of that is it takes time, and it may seem like it's a score, you go and you leave, and I think a lot of the big wave community realizes it's so interdependent on the community also of people trying to do the same thing, where we all compete for the attention in a weird way, even in science. Right. And when you communicate and articulate with your competition, so to speak, then it can become more of a community versus sort of this, there's mutual aid that can happen. And that's sort of where I'm at now, is finding who are the partners that are doing similar work. How can we work together? How can we take the burden off of each other so that the times we do spend doing the work and talking about the work is most impactful?
Right. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me to hear you talk about it in that fashion, because you speak about it so beautifully in the new Vice documentary, just about your interest and almost obsession with, you know, studying systems and ecosystems, and even hearing you talk about the way you approach your work and the team and the community there. Like, you can hear you've identified like different symbiotic roles where you're like, okay, that's why, you know, we work with a bigger, broader group. You know, with this new documentary, I do want to encourage everyone to check it out. I've watched it a couple of times, most recently this morning, The Smartest Surfer in the World. It's on YouTube.
I didn't, just for the record, I didn't make that title up. That was their choice.
That was my sub question. I'm like, there's no way Cliff thought this was but I get it. It's a good hook. I'll put it that way. And it's good for Vice there. But I want to encourage everyone to check it out, because it's such a great documentary. So we won't spoil it here, but can you just talk about how, you know, this project came to be for you? And there's so many amazing voices in it, you know, Ardo Sarai and Jerry Lopez, and how did this project come up for you? And how did so many, like, you know, frankly, just iconic people come in to talk about your story?
Yeah, that piece, I'm really just flattered that these people who have been my favorite, you know, people to learn from, whether it's what they put out in the surf media or the culture or just in private conversations, that they would speak such kind things about the work and go beyond to start talking about me. That was never the request, was to help me share the work, and that they shared some very kind things. I'm so flattered and humbled by those people there. I didn't expect that, but I hope that's not like the focus. Really, the focus was about trying to share with sort of our community of surfers and beyond that there are other avenues that are a part of surf culture that we can recognize and that we can really lean into and be okay with it. Just because you like something like science doesn't mean you're any less of a surfer or you're not contributing any less to surf culture. So I have a longstanding partnership with Reef Footwear. And when we look at different ways to talk about work or talk about how do we contribute to the surf community, they have been a strong supporter of the mission of the Mega Lab, which is a research group that I helped to found, which develops ocean technology to help protect the ocean and give it to communities who may need it the most. And Reef just wanted to really help, I guess, elevate that message as from a surf lens. And we were just capturing what we've been doing the last few years with mapping reefs around the world. And we were thinking about how do we share this message in a way that is digestible and accessible to broader audiences. And one of the members of the lab, who's also one of the communication specialists at Surfrider Foundation, Elliot Wright, he went to, and he's a big skatehead and a surfer, and he was going to these premieres of the Let It Kill You series put on by Vice, and he went to the Artosari Let It Kill You section, and he went up after and he said, hey, there's this, I know you folks aren't really doing surfers, but there's this idea that one surfer is trying to share. Would you folks be willing to talk about it? And Arto is a friend of mine, so Arto's like, yeah, you guys should do Cliff. So then like Arto told the director, and then Elliot's like, oh, you know Cliff? And then we just started, it started there where the director, Ben McQueen, reached out. He said, hey, I'm not really familiar with you. And I'm like, I wouldn't expect you to be like, what can I help with? And they said, we're considering moving into larger demographics besides just skateboarding. And that's how it kind of started, really. It was just from a movie night, Elliot going and Arto supporting it, and then Reef coming in with some financial support and also assets. They provided Vice with all this archival footage of what we've captured over a few years, shot by people like Alex Kilauano, Todd Glazer, Darren Crawford, Evan Shell. There's a lot of really cool people that have just, not even getting paid a lot of times, just show up with their camera and come along for the ride and have fun. And it found its way into a nice sort of culmination of what is it like to love surfing and science.
Hearing you talk about the folks at Reef support not only you, but this kind of project. There's a lot in 2025 that, people can be down about, but it does feel like that's a pretty significant evolution in surf marketing compared to, 30 years ago, where it wasn't quite as so multi-dimensional, right? And I think of this quote that Wayne Rabbit Bartholomew had. It was in Justin Gaines' Brendan Margot Margison video, Vonderjahr, and he's talking about, I will map this back to us, I promise. He's talking about how, Margot was like the first free surfer. He goes, and that's an incredibly hard thing to do. And the first thing you have to be is like an amazing surfer to be able to do that. And I think of that with you as well, because, this isn't sort of the standard path for a professional surfer you would have seen 30 years ago. But the last time you were on a couple of years ago, you said something that really stuck with me, which was that, surfing gave you a voice, but that science gave you something to say. And I think that's really captured beautifully in this documentary. And I was hoping you could maybe expand a little bit on that, because it's a real, like, both sides of this for you are working in such harmony.
Yeah, thank you. That's with Margot. He's inspired so many people around the world. Sure. Dave Rostovich. Essentially Machado was able to be a part of that progression of free surfing. Right. And really looking back, I think about people like Larry Bertelman, who like in the late 70s was like rolling around in, it was a different sort of message for sure, but that like Uncle Larry was having pictures in front of like Bentleys or like Rolls Royces and like Pepsi Cola, and it was a way to like show there is contribution outside of competition, and in addition to competition, there's a way to contribute. And the evolution, I think, it's the pioneers in those sort of lanes, you always will get compared to them. And it's such a high peak that they exist on Uncle Jerry Lopez, that is essentially still supported to surf freely. Rob Machado, and even Dave, Rostovich. Yeah. These people are still doing this, and I see it now as they are sort of these beacons of light that are out there sharing, contributing to something that we as surfers feel is relatable to us. We don't always feel that we can go out in a certain amount of time under extreme stress and come out victorious against a battle or something like that. That sometimes the battles we face are over hours, weeks, months, maybe even years. We have these internal battles with ourselves or with ideas. And that's kind of something in sort of the free surf space that surfing for you outside of parameters, they help. It's like, it's sort of tools that help us to feel like we're winning those battles. And for me, science is just something similar to surfing in that sense. When I quote unquote paddle out into the science lineup, it's a way for me to sort of feel like I'm doing something for a community with a purpose. I'm in a competition, but it's not against another scientist. Like how when I surf, I don't feel like I'm competing against another surfer. I feel like I'm sort of emulating some of the internal battles that I feel every day, and I'm able to catch a wave, and I'm able to feel like I accomplished something, I contributed something in the waves. I feel that too in the lab. So the surf and the science, they're so similar to me in like the philosophy that it just kind of makes sense to me to kind of align them and maybe share that as sort of my like my practice in addition to surfing. It's actually not in addition. It's the way I am a surfer. It's like my practice. It's my art. Obviously, it's my culture and my identity. But I feel it's pretty inclusive. Science is like you don't have to be like a certain group or club to care about science. You can agree with it or you don't agree with it, and that's a part of the scientific process. It's perfectly okay to say that's bullshit. That's not how I see the world. And when you're critical about science, you're contributing to science, which is why I think it's kind of like it's cool. I just love connecting the two, and that the surf industry has been open to that and realize, and I don't know, maybe if the industry even has thought about it that much to say, yeah, a surfer scientist can be in addition to a surfer artist or a surfer musician. It's to me, it all is very one and the same. It's just different ways.
Well, I think a strong argument for that approach too is it becomes a lot more relatable. It's like when something is so hyper specialized, you can be a fan of it, but I think for a lot of especially participatory surfers, they're like, well, that's not my life. But when they see, people like yourself have a vocation and have a professional job and still are surfing at such a very high level, I think it's really inspiring, right? And I think it means a lot to people. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Dr. Cliff Kapono a bit more about where he's been at over the last couple of years. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with Dr. Cliff Kapono. Cliff, we're talking about in the first segment, and I mentioned that you, for a long time, have been on the short list of favorite surfers from favorite surfers, and that's reflected well in this new Vice documentary. We have some major names being like, I love the way Cliff surfs, and again, people should check this documentary out. The smartest surfer in the world. It's on YouTube. But one of those things that I found really interesting was you were very candid about earlier in your life, like struggling, leaving Hawaii, going to San Diego, And it felt like you had this idea in your head of like what a professional surfing pathway could be. And it took a few major moments for you to realize that you had a different path, and ultimately one that was the right fit for you and kind of more fulfilling. I don't want to overcook it, but can you talk to us just a little bit about that read, and if that is accurate when you're coming up, where you're like, there's one way to be a professional surfer, and obviously that's hasn't proven to be true.
Yeah, I think that's just reflective of the time that we're in and the way the surf culture and industry fluctuates, where, and I'm not sure because it's so dependent on generation, or maybe this sort of thing happened before, and I'm sure it's going to happen again, where sort of people try to reinvent themselves. And I think maybe industries and cultures, they begin to question the direction of where things are going. And I didn't question that growing up. As a professional surfer, for me, you did all the amateur contests, you went to nationals, you won it or did well, you landed a big contract, and then you became a world champion. Those were people in our community that have done that many times over. So there was no, really in Hawaii growing up, I can't think of any strong presence of free surfer really that I could see was a path towards making a living out of surfing. And really it wasn't so much to make a living. I just wanted to afford the habit growing up. Right. That was sort of my goal, to be a quote unquote pro surfer. Free board shorts and free boards. That was like, you're a pro, and I can figure, I'll live on the beach, we'll do whatever to feed myself. But it didn't realize growing up, because I wasn't in any of the amateur contests, and I didn't really, I guess I wasn't really in a position in my community to afford time or resources towards an endeavor like winning a contest in the surf. Not to say it's not important, because I still feel those things are very important for our culture of surfing. It's just that wasn't where I existed growing up. And also being from a rural town in Hawaii, accessibility to industry support, and even an industry to understand, why would we support this kid where there's one surf shop that sells very little product every year. So I kind of accepted that. But when I looked at science, the industry was right in front of me. There was people with sort of open hands saying, hey, you can, as a native person, there's so few of you folks, literally less than 1% of native people receive STEM training as a vocation, as a way to contribute to society, to elevate your societal position. And all it requires you to do is spend more time reading and taking tests. And to me, it was less intense as becoming a construction worker or being on the fishing boats, which are a lot of my family members and friends do, that I respect deeply. I just maybe was trying to find the keyhole out to the break, and I was like, oh, if I just do well in school, I can still surf. And the scholarships that I began to receive, any little bit of extra sort of financial support, allowed me to afford surfboards and allowed me to get plane tickets and dirt bag my way to different surf breaks. So yeah, I guess for me, looking back at growing up, it wasn't no longer I needed to be a quote unquote traditional pro surfer to afford a surfboard and board shorts. I could buy them with the money that my academics were supporting me with. And on top of that, I was also gaining insights into how the world works. My first degree was in biotechnology, plant and environmental biotechnology. And this was 2005 to 2009, right when sort of the bubbling up of GMO production with Monsanto and Syngenta happened in Kauai, led by Dustin Barca, who is
Right.
a world tour surfer, world class, one of the best surfers still to come out of Hawaii. And that he, as a pro surfer who I seen doing what I valued, caring about what now I'm learning in school and what I've just learned in school, it brought a lot of sort of encouragement to continue along this path and maybe don't worry about it as much as I did, because the worry was just, how do I afford to keep surfing? And once that allowed me to afford surfing, it kind of rested my mind, and I was able actually to surf more and better than I was. And leaving Hawaii and entering into California, professional surfing was not really on the menu for me. It was to get a PhD, and I knew that was going to require a lot of sort of mental discipline and time away from the waves, and I was okay with that. I accepted that. But then I went to school right above Blacks and Scripps, and it was just in so close proximity, some other really great waves in Southern California, that it just was serendipitous to be able to surf just as much as I was before going to California. And it helped me to, I guess, maybe elevate a bit of my surf intellect alongside of my academic intellect. And from there, just a series of, I guess, fortunate events led to being seen by the industry. And sort of when you're seen, you're probably seen, well, I'm sure I was seen with a lot of maybe more talented surfers and more accomplished surfers within sort of like the bracket of who can we support as an industry member. And then it becomes, why this person over that person? And when I communicated that, I would like to be an advocate for scientific literacy, improving scientific literacy in our surf community, it was just different. And actually Vissla was that first sort of group that believed in me to say, hey, I think we can support the elevation of scientific literacy in our surfers. We're into innovation and creativity, and they seen the science as an avenue for that. So really, when Vissla came on to say, let's start you off at something modest, and we'll see where you can take these little bit of funds, and that just opened up a whole new avenue of being able to not the pay part wasn't really the driving force when this part of my life happened, because I could afford boards and travel. It was more, how can I contribute more impactfully? And Vissla came in and allowed me to sort of get that opportunity to say, hey, there's, as a community, we care about these ideas, and Cliff wants to share some ways to think about it. And it evolved over the time.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it goes back to what you said before, which is, surfing gave you a voice and you had something to say from the scientific community that you were a part of. And as you point out, it's like at this point in your life, you didn't necessarily need the money. It wasn't a career thing, but at some point we all have to decide like how we spend our time and how we can be the most effective. And it feels like that balance for you has been so productive. And you haven't implied this. I just want to stress too, like, I don't think there's been anything tokenistic about your career in the sense of like, we need to have, we got to hit a musician vertical or an artist vertical or a scientific vertical, because the bona fides you have just from a purely surfing talent standpoint are so high. And, you're a humble guy. You wouldn't say that about yourself, but people like Dave Rostovich say that about you too. And one thing that seems very consistent when, as a surfer, my heroes say this about you as one of their heroes, is your connection to the ocean. And, surfing, it's subjective, like everyone's on a spectrum of experience. And I think about this so much with myself. I'm 42. I still want to surf better. I've got 11-year-old kids that are starting to get into the ocean. I think about it in terms of like, well, how do I parent them in the right way, in a way that's supportive? And I map all that back to like being at the WSL for 20 years and watching what we'd consider like bleeding edge, high performance CT surfers. And they're all amazing. They all have a connection with the water, but the ones that are a level above, it's a special connection with the water. And that's a little bit long winded, but I bring it up because it feels like that particular part of your approach to the professional surfing side of your life, it's so rooted in connection to the ocean and understanding the water and understanding the way it moves. And I feel like that almost above every other component of like time in the water or this board or that wetsuit or that contest result has been so fulfilling in terms of advancing your surfing is that connection piece.
Again, thank you for those kind words. And I that connection is sort of a focal point of what I want to be a part of. I just want to connect to the ocean, and I want to connect to sort of this cosmic expression of where we are at in time and space. And that thinking might be a result of my Hawaiian ancestry, which we think about this daily, and it might come from just the series of events that led me to where I'm at now. I talk about this with a good friend, Thomas Campbell, about the chances of chance and what is our own free will and what is destiny and things like that. And it's very hard to sort of find sense out of a lot of these ideas. And surfing, and that, well, not just surfing, but when I connect with everything that is also trying to just survive, things make a bit more sense. And surfing is something that I've chosen to just dedicate time towards, more so than I think, science for me is not like a easy thing. Science, it takes my attention and my focus, and I read papers multiple times. I have thoughts that I take long pauses, and I try to be intentional in the way I word things. Where surfing, I can, it's spontaneous, and it's almost sort of coming from another space. And that's just what I hone into. And that, I don't even think that my surfing is that great. Maybe what people are talking about, those people in the film, they're about that too. They're just about the feeling. And those are the people that have always inspired me, is when I watch them surf or when I'm with them surfing, you can feel that as well. You can feel that that connection. It's a deeper connection of not just in a joy. It's things start to make sense that you didn't know you're asking questions to.
Right. I'd imagine it's hugely liberating just in the equipment that you can ride too. And you're so good on like virtually every kind of like watercraft. But I kind of liken it back to, early in your story and having, I wouldn't say like a singular vision of what a professional surfer was, but I'm a few years older than you. We kind of all had like, gatekeeper codes on like, this is what a professional surfer looks like. You need to surf this way and look this way and ride that board. But that is almost at the opposite end of the spectrum of like, well, I'm actually here to connect with what's happening out in the water today. And that's not what was happening yesterday, or it wasn't happening at that wave. And I'm going to surf the way the ocean wants me to, in a way. And that doesn't mean I ride the same board every day. And I wonder if you could talk to me a little bit about that and just how diverse your equipment competency is. It's so awesome to watch you ride single fin logs and then high performance shortboards and big wave guns, like, and everything. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I think as I was trying to, and again, I'm always trying to improve my ability. When I started to narrow down just as time as a resource, where can I spend more time? What are the fundamental ideas that I want to lean into? I started to see that I guess it's hard to explain, but right now my sort of main focus in the surf is to how do I be a part of the maximum energy flow with the least amount of energy expelled. So like, when I think about a wave coming in, how do I maximize and become the most efficient on that wave so I'm not wasting that energy, I'm only being a part of that energy. So the different crafts that I choose, they're often as a result of that idea. Whether it's, I've been riding these gliders by Josh Hall, these 1010 single fin gliders that are so thin. They're not traditional gliders like a Skip or even like a Chris Christensen Eagle or some of these other people that make amazing gliders as well. It's its own sort of space, and they're really thin and they're really fast, and there's a certain wave that they ride really well, and it's between sort of like a chest high to a little bit overhead wave that you wouldn't typically think I want a glider on. But I just got back from a trip with Cassia Meter down in Scorpion Bay, and we were riding these boards together, and we could have rode small boards, short boards or long boards, but we just kept going back to these longer trimmed out boards because it felt like we were going just so fast and we were in so much control of something that was visually very overwhelming to see all of this board out in front and on a single fin with no leash in front of these rocks. You think, this is, your mind's computing, this isn't a good idea. And when you get on the board, it just makes sense. And that to me is sort of like, what's it about? But then I go down the road and there's say a wave that changes its face a lot. It doesn't want to be ridden. It's like a wild bronco that you have to keep moving around. And in that, I don't want something that is connecting to the face, right. Or I don't want something that is giving me sort of control. I want just to be able to adapt, which is like really like a thruster Hayden sort of shortboard works well, because that board at this particular wave, it sort of sits on top of the water. It doesn't get too stuck into one direction. It's very adaptable to anything a crazy lip or bump might throw at you. So it's not like I want to be good at all these boards at all. I just want to connect in the best way at a particular location. And I've learned that my quiver now, one board is not for everything. It's sort of very specific tools for very specific days that I won't ride a board 300 days out of the year. Maybe 360 days out of the year, I won't ride a certain board. But those 6 days a year, when it comes out, it's for a really good reason. And a lot of times they work, for me at least, in a way that I feel it's appropriate. But also too, there's a lot of footage out there that doesn't get to see the light of day of me just eating a lot of shit and looking really, really bad. So I think, again, what is shared with people is definitely completions a lot of time. And there's a lot of sort of dark sessions that I delete. right.
Put those in the Lance Burkhart, those shots burn them file, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like it because it helps me to understand. I like it. It's like in science, we say negative results are still positive results. Whatever you receive in terms of data helps you to kind of improve. And that's where I enjoy, not so much looking at myself, I really don't, but I really enjoy looking at the way the boards connect with the wave. There's this thing that I'm just recently getting into off of the footage is off my inside rail, how much water shoots off the back of that before it kind of hits the curl. So I'm starting to see, is that relationship between the amount of spray coming off my inside rail mean something. So when I look back at the footage, I'm like, okay, that that had a moment, that didn't have a moment. And then I can go back to the design and communicate with people about how to achieve more of that. So it's almost just exploring more parts of the way waves are ridden. And I don't just look at myself. I actually do this pretty I do this heavily at other people. When I see their stuff come up, I've been watching a lot of Bo Cram. He just got the cover of Surfer's Journal.
Right.
His son of Richard Cram, the king of the cutback and Sunset Beach Australian. I've been really enjoying the way he rides these Christensen longfishes at these left-hand points. And I watched the water shooting off the rail, and the way he holds transition and speed there. I really enjoy that. And even the way that Leah Dawson likes to do her cheater fives and kind of banks off of a cheater five. I watched the water shooting off those hard edges, and knowing Alex Lopez, her husband and shaper, and he's a friend of mine, Uncle Jerry's son too. I then look at the board and say did you shape this so the water would fly off? And sometimes there's explanations for it, sometimes there's not. So it just adds a bit of discovery and exploration, where I know a traditional competition shortboard 6.0 thruster 2.5 or whatever, 18 and a quarter, 18 and a half, 19, whatever people's dimensions are. The nuances are so finite, and they're so, or incremental, I would say, that it's very hard to see the differences of the board interacting with the water. You almost just base it on the pilot and the pilot's feeling of it. Whereas when you see all these different boards across the spectrum of craft, it's very apparent how different boards interact differently, which then can be implemented into those more finite crafts like that shortboard or something like that.
You mentioned Thomas Campbell before. Thomas is an artist. He's so interesting to me. He's had a few surf films. I think I was first exposed to Sprout, but before that he had The Seedling and then The Present. And I think for the last 11 years he's been working on the film that he's currently touring with, Yiwo. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but you feature heavily in this, is my understanding. I haven't seen it yet, but can you talk about that relationship with Thomas? You referenced it before, and I'm just curious about this film project, because Thomas Campbell in 11 years working on something, I am beyond curious as to what this is.
Yeah, Thomas is a dear friend, and Vissla has helped us to become friends over the years. And of course, I was very familiar with his work growing up as well. And that, when I talked about growing up and not seeing from Hawaii this ability to enter into another space as a surfer, I looked out and seen sort of Thomas's work as something that was there. Although I maybe didn't see myself in it, I very much appreciate it because it aligned with something outside of competition. So Thomas's ability to communicate surf feeling and the spectrum of surf craft is sort of at the top in my mind. In addition to, there's some great films out of Australia that have also done similar things, but the way I think Thomas captivated so many audience members in my youth and in your youth, I think it was seemingly unprecedented. And now having his project Why Will come out, and I've been very privileged to kind of see different versions of it and the evolution of what it has become. And my involvement with it at first was purely fan base. Just let's go into your little trailer and watch him cook. And I just thought that was so cool to be able to see him stare at an image or stare at one clip for so long. It's like he would look at it and he would just sit there and think. And then I'd say something, he'd be like, no talking. I'm like, okay. And we just sit and just watching him dive into what that means and the intention behind every clip and why things need to be. It's really inspiring for me to see the level of intention. My involvement, like I said, began at fan, and then I went into being involved in the film and being on camera. But my involvement in the film is not as a surfer. People are always asking me like, "Oh, you're in his film? I heard you're in his film. Like, what part are you surfing?" And I'm like, "I'm actually not surfing. I'm wearing the headdresses, and I'm like one of these creatures in the film. So I'm more of a supporting actor in the non-surfing component of the film, which I'm really stoked to be. I still have the costume that he made me wear, and just being the artist he is, it was a skateboard with like a tarp and mop strings, and he just filmed the silhouette and the way we were doing it. But these costumes that he had us wear, they weren't water friendly. And at one point he wanted to get a silhouette of me floating in the ocean, and he had me stick my head in the water, and I try to lift my head back up. And because this thing is strapped to my head, skateboard with a tarp and is this heavy thing, like I was gonna drown. And I had to rip it all off, and I kind of freaked out. And I went to the surface and I was like, Timo, I'm gonna drown if I do that. I can't do that again. He's like, I just need you to do it for 45 seconds and then you'll be okay. And just looking at him like, dude, like, it's hard to say no to someone who knows the direction where he wants to take the art. And if you're a part of it, it may not always be the most beneficial to your health, but at the end it creates a good story. And I'm really excited for people to see this film. I think it's gonna be whatever it is to people. I think that's what it needs to be. If people like it, that's what it meant to be. If they don't, it was for them not to like it as well. I think it's personally for me, I think it's important to see a film like this today. And I hope people do take a moment to check it out. Thomas is an amazing visionary, incredible artist, and just a really fun person to be around. And seeing his art across his own spectrum of what he wants to release, it's cool. It's cool to have people contributing in their own way, like Thomas.
Very cool. We're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Mega Lab. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. This is the Lineup Podcast. My name is Dave Prodan, here with Dr. Cliff Kapono. Let's talk about the Mega Lab. For listeners that weren't around a couple years ago when you and I dove into it, what is the Mega Lab? How did it come to be? And what are you guys currently working on?
Yeah, the Mega Lab is a group of researchers that study the ocean. Our mission is to develop ocean technology to help protect it and give it to communities who may need it the most. So it's just a group of people who love the ocean. We love being out there in that space. We're big time nerds that like to look at new technology that can help the state of the ocean or help us learn more about it. So it's sort of like a fun club that isn't really exclusive. If you care, and maybe it's almost a safe place for people who don't necessarily consider themselves formal or tradition ocean science researchers. It's a place where we come together and we use our unique skill sets in other avenues of industry to contribute to that mission. We're based out of Hilo. Downtown Hilo is our sort of public center that people can come and speak with us about what we're doing. And we have institutional support and places where we do our research in terms of coral reef ecology. We look at how the molecular world dynamics shift in coral communities. We also look at changing coastlines as sea levels rise. We have different sort of expertise that we lean into to really just understand what are the fundamental basic science research questions that we can ask and hopefully find some answers to that help us to learn more about the ocean and better ways to protect it.
It's very cool. And is this something you mentioned? It sounds like a fairly inclusive project, but if listeners are out there and they're interested in getting involved, like, is there an avenue that you recommend? Or
yeah, totally. Yeah, we have a website, themegalab.org, and there's also a contact to email. It's themegalab@gmail.com. We have an Instagram, the Megalab. So those are all avenues to learn more about our work. Right now, we have 3 main projects. The first project is our Map to Adapt initiative, where we're trying to map 1 million reefs by 2030. And we want to get 10,000 cartographers around the world who maybe don't have any scientific training to take photographs of the reef and email us. And we put it onto this map that you can see your reef, preferably in 3D. But this is the way we want to be able to showcase as like a giant repository of the different reef states around the world. The next project we have is our Observe and Conserve initiative, which puts a live stream camera on a reef here on the Big Island. We got a bunch of cameras that watch it every day. We have a little small subscriber base that is always keeping us honest when the camera gets dirty and we got to clean it. But they also give us insights into different animals that we've never really seen in close proximity to the shoreline, like sometimes pilot whales, or we see animal behavior like fish getting punched by octopus. We see lobsters and eels kind of eating together. There's new behaviors that we're learning by just being able to see what a reef looks like when humans aren't around, and the technology of live stream really has helped us to do that. So that's our next initiative. And then our final initiative is we're building sort of a campus here on this living estuary in downtown Hilo, right in front of a pretty awesome surf break. And it's a place where we want people to come together, where we can put on different events and activities, films, and experiences for people to be a part of the lab from the public situation. Low commitment, come in for the day and you folks can leave. And that's currently being built right now. So it might be a bit of time before it completely is visitable, but we're doing all the necessary permits and community outreaching. We secured our land, which is the hardest part. And that whole process happened where we essentially wrote the landowners who were selling it to say, we don't have a lot of money, but we want to help out. And surprisingly, they were willing to help us get the land. And we kept it out of the hands of hotels and these sort of development companies that wanted to turn that piece of land into a sort of an attraction of exploitation. So we got our first win by getting the land, and now we're developing our space where people can come to be a part of that land.
That sounds incredible. We'll definitely put a link in the show notes for listeners that are interested. You talked about, we're catching you between trips. You're headed to the east coast of the North American continent here in a bit. We're also coming up on, winter in the Northern Hemisphere. And you talked about wanting to stay close to home. And that's a season for you in Hawaii to get some surfing in. For the rest of 2025, do you have any other big projects coming up, or is you going to try to focus on a bit more ocean time?
This trip coming up is going to be passing through New Jersey, and I have some really good friends from New Jersey, and the New Jersey surfing community. I've always had a unique relationship with them, and the way they surf and the waves that they have. They've always have been showing me since really to 2006, 2007, they would come out to the North Shore, the Dark Fall crew, the Kelly brothers, they all came out and they showed these waves that they have. That now we have Instagram and everything, we can see it. But I was seeing those waves, these crazy East Coast kegs that I couldn't believe that's where New Jersey was. So I don't think it's going to be like that when I go, but we're going to show a film over there in New Jersey. And then we're heading up to And then we're heading up to Queens in New York to share the film, and then all the way up to Maine to the Grain Fest to see how this film called Circadian Rhythms can spark conversation about surfboard design, and also how not being tethered to just one frame of thinking when you go out on the ocean can open up new experiences. So that's what this film that we're showing, it really talks about. Hopefully it's going to spark some conversation around, again, surfboard designs. I would really like to learn from these communities. That's sort of something that I'm hoping I can go into the winter season as I'm starting to create the boards specific for the winter. I have to replace some boards that unfortunately didn't survive a few swells. And I think there's so much information out there and valuable knowledge outside of Hawaii that I think might be able to be incorporated into the designs of the boards that I'm making for home. There's just diversifying my own perspective and learning from community is sort of the goal of this sort of film showing on the East Coast at communities that I think can really contribute to the way I look at surfing, the way I want to ride different waves and different designs. So I'm hoping it sparks good conversations and elevates the understanding of boardcraft.
Busy man. Before you go, we did put a feeler out for questions at the Lineup Pod on Instagram. We got a lot for you, really? But we've whittled them down to 3. So first question is from @Coco_Christ, who asks, what is the biggest difference studying on the mainland in San Diego versus studying in Hawaii?
For me, the biggest difference, I think the biggest difference while studying was in Hawaii. I just understood maybe the way to gain knowledge and go about finding opportunity to support how to learn. In Hawaii, there's just certain rules about not being. This always comes off kind of strange in Hawaiian culture, where there's a saying that says, "Don't ask questions," and I think people might feel that that stops the ability to learn. You need to ask questions. You need to be inquisitive, and I agree. I think the way I grew up with this "don't ask too many questions" is don't be like annoying, and don't expect and feel entitled that you deserve access to all the information all the time, that there's a sort of a precursor to receiving knowledge is to show how dedicated you are to how you will use the knowledge. And in Hawaii, that culture kind of exists in the community, and maybe it bleeds into the academic setting where if there's avenues where you're struggling, you show how much you really want to learn those things. When I went to San Diego in the academic setting, it was not clear to me, how do I get better at learning? I didn't know if I had to sort of like get tutored, or I didn't know if I had to make friends with people. These are all new ideas that I didn't have a lot of background in chemistry. I went from a sort of biological based program to a chemical program. So I needed to learn a lot new ideas, and it was difficult for me to learn how to get access to knowledge. Whether it's finding times to go to the library, or talking to different teachers, or even creating sort of social spaces of people that I wouldn't necessarily think to be around. It was just as much as a social experiment as it was as like an academic setting. It was just a new place that I had to learn the new rules. So the biggest difference was myself, I think. When I was at home, I didn't have to really change who I was. But when I went to San Diego, I had to learn how to sort of changed certain things about me that weren't relatable to people in San Diego that helped me to form relationships to get access to the knowledge.
That's a really interesting breakdown. It reminds me of like that saying in the digital age where it's like, earned knowledge is not accessed information, where I think a lot of us kind of gravitate towards like, I just pull my phone out, there's the information, but it's like, that's way different than like earning your way through it. I appreciate that. Second question is from Romy Riddle, who asks, what was your PhD title? What was a synopsis of the research, and how did you end up researching this specific topic? They must be an academic. They crammed 3 questions into one there, but I'm sure we'll get a good answer.
Okay, I'm going to try to remember my dissertation title, but I got my PhD in chemistry, particularly analytical chemistry, and I'm hopefully I remember my title of my dissertation, but I think it was the multi-omic characterization of human and environmental interaction, which used different tools to understand the molecular and the microbial dynamics of how humans change the more they go into an environment, whether it's built or whether it's natural. So sort of my projects that I studied looked at how to learn the tools of what molecules exist in and on our body, what bacteria and microbes exist in and on our body, and understand that community of molecules and microbes change depending on where I'm at. I had to learn the skill sets to see that change. And that was through becoming proficient in this technology known as mass spectrometry and genome sequencing. And those tools allowed me to then look at the dynamics of different people in different spaces, or even different coral reefs under different disturbances. And that's the sort of research that I did. And the reason why I got into being able to interpret the dynamics between humans in different environments and coral reefs under different disturbances is because in Hawaiian culture, we have a strong philosophy that we are intimately connected to the natural environment. And sometimes that can be lost on people who think it's sort of mystical or spiritual. And science and understanding how to articulate the molecular and microbial changes, that just helped, I think, people to receive it a lot easier. It weirdly, by converting sort of this indigenous perspective into a contemporary, conventional scientific vernacular, people were like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, the more you go into the ocean, the more it's going to give you a certain type of bacteria that will then start to move all across your body. And that bacteria is not just found everywhere in the ocean. Some reason this bacteria sees a human skin when you jump in the ocean and it says, hey, you're my friend, or you're something that I want to be around. And it starts to colonize your skin, or starts to exist in and on you. And they don't just do that for every organism that goes into the ocean. The other organisms that the same particular bacteria will find you are whales or dolphins or mammals, marine mammals. So there's something that connects us, something about the way me and the whale exist in the ocean. This bacteria wants to be a part of us. And we have these sort of stories in our Hawaiian culture about how we're related to these animals in the marine space. So it just has allowed me to feel more empowered to communicate these Hawaiian stories in a way that isn't just for Hawaiian people. Actually, it's a species conversation that we can have, and we just have some songs and dances about it. We also have, I guess, in a weird way, science can be like a song and a dance, maybe not as easy on the ears, but I think it becomes a way to include more people in that kind of conversation.
Yeah, that's very cool. I'm super interested in that now that I've heard you talk about it. That's really cool. Last question is from @TQool for Megan, who asks, were you more nervous giving your TED Talk or paddling out at Pe'ahi?
I would say pe'ahi for sure. Like,
it's respectful.
yeah,
It's a fair answer, right? Like,
TED is an amazing, was amazing opportunity to be able to share ideas and learn ideas and just experience everything. But the TED community is really supportive, and it's a production. They tell you how to do it. You're kind of held pretty much by the hand how to achieve success, get a wave, I guess, in that lineup. Everyone wants you to get a wave in TED.
right.
Jaws, I think people are supportive, but they want you to survive and live. So there's just a different level of accomplishment between TED and Jaws, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. We're dealing with finite resources too in the ocean, right? So that's a great answer. Thanks to everyone that wrote in at the lineup pod. We're now down to our final segment. This is the lightning round. For you, Cliff, this is the lightning round redux. So these are 10 questions. You have answered them before. I've got your answers here from a couple of years ago. We'll see if they're the same.
Oh, no.
See, answer as quickly as you can.
Okay.
Okay. If you could only have one board set up for the rest of your life, single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad bonzer, or finless, which would you choose?
I'm going to have to say single fin.
All right. Points for consistency. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Burrito or pizza?
Burrito.
Last book you read?
The last book I read, I haven't read a completely read a book. Probably the last one I read is David Chang, The World and Everything Upon Us.
Okay. That's an update from a couple of years ago. It's good.
Yeah.
More than one book. Best surf film ever?
Best surf film ever. These are always hard for me. Maybe it's the same, maybe it's not, but I'm going to have to say Many Classic Moments. Gary
It's
Capel.
the same. Yeah, look at you. What is one wave you never have to go back to?
One wave I'll never have to go back to? I mean, one wave that I probably can't go back to would be Bowls in Pohoiki, because the lava took it.
Wow. Hey, that's a good answer, at least. If you only get to surf one wave for the rest of your life and you can dream cast it, perfect conditions, just you and the people you want there, which wave would it be?
My hometown wave, Honoli'i, Rivermouth. Yeah.
Best person to share a lineup with?
Best person to share a lineup with? I don't think it can be one person. It's just the person who's, is as stoked as you getting a wave as they are.
Worst person to share a lineup with?
The person who doesn't want you to get a wave and wants them all for themselves.
Last one. Finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by
being more present.
Hey, man, that's points for consistency. It's a great answer. Dr. Cliff Kapono, thank you so much for coming back on the lineup. Congratulations on everything you're doing. Everyone should check out the Mega Lab. Everyone should check out the new Vice documentary on Cliff, smartest surfer in the world. Not his title, but very, very accurate. Man, I can't wait to talk to you again. Hopefully shorter interval this time, but good luck the rest of the year, and we'll be keeping an eye out.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone.